Hi, this is Jim.
Hey, Jim, are you guys ready to go?
Yeah, I think we're ready. We're missing a couple, but we may have to. It looks like you're recording this.
Yeah, I can't remember her name, but Catherine contacted me from you all and said that she wouldn't be able to attend and asked me to record. For some reason, I'm trying. The last time I tried to record a webinar on WebEx, when I went back afterwards, it may have been something I did, it wasn't there. So hopefully I'll be far more successful this time.
No, it sounds good. If nothing else, we could redo a short demo for anybody that wants to see it. But we can go ahead and jump right in. Do you want us to go around the table on our side?
Please,
let you know who's here.
Yeah,
I'm Jim. I've talked to you before.
Sandy Alsop from County IT.
I'm Mike from County IT as well.
Good morning. I'm Kara from County Payroll, and I work with Catherine.
That's all on our side.
Okay. With us, we've got JJ Tuvu, who's with me. He's a systems engineer, and he's going to be doing part of the demo today. I'm Jamie Mangrum. I'm the Vice President of Taborda Solutions, and we have two gentlemen in the room who are actually developers who did work on different forms that you're going to see today. And I, because we're in a larger room, I kind of invited them to just sit and listen to the demos. We have Marquise and Devar, who are both developers on the different products. So I'll go ahead and get started. I am recording this. My hope is that I'll be able to share a recording with you guys shortly afterwards that you guys can distribute to people that didn't really have an opportunity to go through the demo. So I was in state government as an IT leader for about 20 years. I was the CIO of the Department of Corrections, the Department of State Hospitals, the Department of General Services, and then I worked for the federal receivership over healthcare and state prisons for about 4 or 5 years in charge of all of the IT for healthcare. And so one thing I found over the years was HR, especially in state government, was very underserved by IT. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that the state in particular was trying to launch a large enterprise project, and every time we would go forward as a department and ask for a project to be approved, they would deny it, saying that we really needed to wait for the large enterprise project. The large project crashed and burned and never came to fruition. And so as a result, there's like the absence of technology within the state. What we've actually found, though, is that's actually very common throughout government. It's not just state government in California, and for various reasons. And so we do a lot of work in what they call the forms and workflow area, where we have customers who will come to us and they'll say, we have these sets of forms and we want them automated with electronic signature and we want our workflow. And we've been doing that for years. And we started to notice patterns here where we were having a lot of literally the same project over and over again. And so we kind of took the leap and decided to start developing, for all intents and purposes, off-the-shelf products. So one of the first products that we developed was, we refer to as HR as a service, and it's growing on a daily basis and is available as a consumable as a service. And I'll explain what that is. And you can tell that I'm getting out of sequence here. So when I was a CIO, I always hated PowerPoint presentations. I'd always have vendors come in and have like 15 slides about their company. So this is the only slide about Taborda. So we are now a national company. We started over 10 years ago. We were small business certified, and we outgrew that within the first 4 or 5 years. Now we have offices in Austin, Texas, and here in Sacramento, California, and we're a $50 million a year company. We started out as a reseller, meaning that we sold things like Oracle and Microsoft, and then staff services. We now are really starting to move strongly into selling Taborda brand products as a service. And this is, as a service type of our product, is a product, everybody always hears probably the term cloud. And what that means is it's a hosted solution that you don't have to basically buy technology, you don't have to buy servers and things like that, and it's delivered to you as a consumable service that you basically pay a monthly or an annual subscription fee to use it. One of the great things about HR as a service, or some of the great things, is that it's it's ready to go. It's when we go to a client. Normally, we're about in the state government space. We're about 95% ready. The 5% is more just tuning roles, responsibilities, and then tuning the workflow for those individual departments that we're deploying to. We do include electronic signature. It works both with the Adobe eSign product and also the DocuSign product. There are all kinds of dashboards and reports that are built into the system, so you don't have to track paper anymore. You're able to actually look at and see who has actually completed a process, who has not, and then you can get the list of the employees who have not completed a process. So let's say you've sent out a link for the FPPC Form 700 to a number of individuals that are filers, and you can actually at a moment's notice pull up and see who's completed that and who hasn't, and then contact the people who haven't. I already said that you don't have to do the CapEx procurements, you don't have to buy server software. You can start really small, so you only pay for what you need. We're responsible for basically the security and upgrades and uptime. I like it because it's a really low-risk approach to using new technology, primarily because if you're using it and you decide that it's not a good fit for you, you cancel the subscription, and then you don't have to explain why you have this technology sitting in your data center that you're not using, that you've procured, and have to explain to your bosses and your constituents. So it's a really good way to try technology. I've included this for the different security certifications that our partner ThinkSmart, which is the underlying technology that HR as a service is built upon, holds, FedRAMP, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and so on. Sometimes people are afraid of using technologies that are delivered from the cloud. They see things in the news, about breaches and so on. And what I've discovered and how I answer to that fear is, in most cases, the technologies that we're delivering are far more secure and protected than anything I ever managed as a CIO when I was in government, primarily because to get these certifications and then to maintain them, the external audit entities that are coming in and auditing your operations really keep you on your toes, and you have to stay in compliance and so on. And what I always knew, inside of government was most of the time we were doing self-auditing. And so as a result, you're just not open to the same level of scrutiny, and so on. And so all of these certifications maintain regular audit schedules, and so on, where people are coming in and literally going through the entire operations, and then if you're not in compliance, you are not recertified and you lose your certification. So, and we have a lot more data and information on the security and privacy that we can provide. These are, it's actually an older set of 2 slides. I would, for you all, focus on the form titles of the different types of forms that are already current and workflows that are built into HR as a service. It's actually growing, as I said, on a regular basis. We're adding in things like training registration and tracking and other types of exam tracking, recruitment, and other types of modules that will be added into HR as a service. We even added the United Way campaign forms and so on. I'll provide this slide deck to you so you don't have to sit and try to read all of these, and so on. But it's just an example of the different types of forms and workflows. So today we're going to be doing a demo that shows our request for personnel action workflow. We're also going to show a form that we have called the Form 686, which is the employee action request. I'm going to show you that because we have actually taken your PPAF form and brought it into our system, but there are things that we don't know about it. Like as an example, and I'll explain as we go through the demo, we don't know how conditionally, if you select this checkbox, which fields then are you supposed to specifically fill out in your form, and also the workflow. But the 686 will give you ideas as to how your form would work, and so on once we built that conditional logic into the form. So I'm going to cover today just really quick. I'm going to walk through and give you a really high level of how things work within HRaaS as a service. And I'm going to show you kind of a real quick story on just the FPPC Form 700. And this is a common form that all government entities in California are required to fill out, depending on if someone is a filer or not. And it'll start with the employee who has to fill it out receiving an email message basically stating that they have the requirement to fill out their annual compliance, or if they're coming into a new role where they are a filer.
Jamie,
sure.
This is Sandy. Can I interrupt you just 1 minute?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll
Yeah.
just notify that Lisa, our HR director, is going to be dialing in a minute, so just heads up on that. I guess she's not in the office and didn't have the WebEx, so Ryan's the dial-in number.
She's dialing in from somewhere else?
Yeah, so she'll just be do the audio.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the employee, when they click on the link, it'll launch into a screen similar to what you see now with, basically the form that they'll start filling out. If you're like me, I filled out the Form 700 so many times that I would just keep my Form 700 from the prior time. I'd pull out a printed copy, and I could quickly just select the schedules that I needed to and go through. But what we've done is we've actually kind of built in logic into all of our forms where it makes it a much easier process for an employee to use the form. Welcome, Kelly. So in this case, and I tried this recently, my wife fills out the Form 700, and she went through the wizard on this and actually discovered that she had not been filling out 2 schedules all along in her career that she should have been, and was doing it the way I was doing it, just continuously filling it out the same each year. So, but we ask you these 6 questions for the Form 700, and as you go through and you answer these, it dynamically builds out the form and the workflow for you. It'll select the schedules that match the answers to your questions. So then you can see in the yellow at the top the tabs now that are showing of the different schedules that you'll be required then to fill out as you walk through this. The other thing is the Form 700 is a 23-page document with 15 pages of help, and we've, which is kind of amazing, we took all of the help and built it through all of the forms, and we do this with all of our forms. You can see the yellow box. When you mouse over any of the fields, the pertinent information in help is context sensitive, so it'll actually pop up and show you help right there, and you don't have to go hunt for it throughout like the original printed form. Once you're done and you have finished, this is showing the Adobe eSign product. You electronically sign the document. It is a legal binding signature, and then it will route the form then to the next step in the workflow. In this case, also it gives the individual who filled it out and the person who's receiving in the workflow an opportunity to print out or save the actual PDF document that has been signed. And as well as you're going to have the data in the system that then you can actually pull from the system into your data systems and so on. Also very important is anything that's ever done with any of the forms, there's a full audit trail. So you can track literally every single field, every email that was ever sent, if documents were uploaded, if anything was ever signed, if there are comments that were made on the form that went with the form, and so on. You can't do anything in the system without it showing up in the audit trail. And this is something that you can actually export out and provide to an audit entity if necessary. This is an example, and you'll get to actually see all these in a minute, of one of the report screens where on the left you see the pie chart. You can actually click on the orange portion, and it would show you that one person that had not completed and signed the FPPC 700, and then you could actually contact them and find out why. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead now and turn this over to JJ, and he is going to actually start walking through demo.
All right, how's it going, everyone? I'm going to be demoing our request for personnel action today. It also can be called the position action request form. So basically the idea behind this form is that the hiring division or hiring department is going to fill the first half of this form. Some information on there is going to be required by the HR personnel, which is going to be next. They're also going to review the information that's filled by the hiring division so that they can just verify that everything is correct. And then after that, all parties will sign the document that are required to sign. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through this form, filling basic information in. So you can see here it's a pretty simple form. It's just, you're just filling in basic information. When we get down to our actual position action request, that's actually where you would select what this form is actually for. And so we have things like reclass, redirection position, promotion in place, new position, things like that. And you'll notice there's 2 stars above certain selections. Those 2 stars actually means that a complete justification is required for that option. And so basically with the complete justification, you have to answer 10 questions. Generally, sometimes people will have it already filled out on another Word document, and they would just want to attach it. In that case, you would just hit yes. And at the bottom of our form, we have all of the attachments, because there are multiple attachments that come with this process. But if you do not, then you can hit no, and you can actually fill in your justification here. In our later update, we actually are going to be changing this. It's going to look a little bit different. We're actually going to have a field for each individual question. That way you can just answer it individually if you don't have your justification and you're not doing it in an area box. But instead, just for right now, for the demo purposes, we have it set up like this. As we move on, you'll see we have our current position for the employee, and then the summary of what happened. At the very bottom here, we have our 4 choices of attachments. So you can select which attachments you're actually going to attach. This is really cool, so you can basically track that before you actually get into the form. You can download them before even entering anything. So if you literally just needed the justification or the duty statement, you can just download that before actually getting into the form. You'll see here we have attachment buttons, and you can just simply click that attachment button, select your file, and it'll instantly add it to the form here directly. So we'll go ahead and submit it there. And since I've just submitted as the employee, or as the division, the hiring division, next would be the HR representative to review that. So right here, I'm actually in my HR representative's email, and you'll see that it says a request for personnel action is completed. I'll go ahead and click on that, and you'll see we have a notification here. What's really cool about these notifications is that they're fully customizable, so we can set them up to say whatever you would like. What's also really cool is that we can pull fields from the actual form into this notification. So you see I actually put an agency here, and I use my unit number as number 12, and it pulls that information from the actual form. You can also do cool things like approving or denying, and downloading attachments and things like that within the notification. And so I'm going to go ahead and click that button to review, and you'll see now I see the same information that was inputted beforehand, but since I'm the HR personnel, I can actually go in and enter things in. So if they forgot certain fields, like he forgot to put a name here and a title, I can go ahead and do that for him. And so this is generally how the process would work for a request for personnel action. So they can go through, check the form. We have 2 ways of getting to the next page here. We have a next button down here, and then we also have our tabs above, and you'll notice it says Human Resources only. Basically with the Human Resources side, we start off with a series of questions. It's basically going to ask if the form is filled out correctly. If it is not, then they go ahead and enter in comments of what is wrong, and it gets sent back to the division or the hiring department so that they can correct those changes and resubmit so that this can actually be submitted. If yes, then they go ahead and put in the fiscal year and the RPA number for this form. And also they answer if there is a proposed position, just because the HR personnel would be the only one with the proposed position number. If they do not, then they can go ahead and submit without it. And so we'll go ahead and submit one more time. All right, so that basically states that the form was good to go and that there was no corrections that needed to be made. And so now basically it will be sent out for signature. I'm just going to move this over just a little bit here. And so you see here I'm emailed within my personnel's email here. And if I click here, I can actually review and sign the document. You'll see the information is already inputted there, just like as if you were filling it yourself in Adobe or something like that. Some of the fields are going to be unfilled just because I had to, I didn't fill everything in. So we'll just go ahead and click to sign here. All right, and so it's really cool because you can actually download that copy if you needed it right then and there. Otherwise, you can wait for the rest of the, wait for everyone else to sign their document, the same document, and then we'll go ahead and get started on the second half of it. Let me just go ahead and sign all of these in all of our emails here. And so now I'm basically the analyst manager, and at that point, that person is also required to review and sign. And so we'll go ahead and sign as the manager. Signature and click to sign. And then lastly, I'll sign as the hiring department, and basically our form will be completely signed. All right, so this is our last signature. Again, I'm the hiring department. So what's really cool is if you're not sure where the signature is on the form here, you can actually hit this next required field, and it takes you directly to your signature here. Also, if you did not want to sign something, you do have the option of doing so, and it'll send an email back to all the respective parties letting them know your decision. All right, so we'll go ahead and apply those signatures. So now we have a completely signed document. Everyone will be sent a copy of that final document so that they can download it for themselves. Let me just get back into that just to show you. All right. And so you'll see here that the form is signed and filed. We're going to go ahead and start the second part of the process here because the HR personnel has a little more information they need to fill. So they're going to be receiving this notification here telling them to complete the form. We're going to go ahead and proceed to the form. All right, you'll notice here they have the appointment and employee action here. So these we're just going to go ahead and fill some information here really quickly. So you'll notice the form is building itself out as I'm clicking things and as I'm going along. Hitting yes or no does change things throughout the form. So you're only going to see what you're supposed to see, creating that custom experience for every employee or every HR hiring department, whoever's filling our forms. They're basically going to have a custom experience every time while going through this. All right. We also have the Form 607, so if you already have that as an attachment, you can attach it. If not, you can enter in the information here. So we'll go ahead and hit no for that. And then we'll go ahead and submit for one more time. Basically, that's going to be sent to the HR analyst manager again, so the manager can review and then sign. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get into our 686 now just because it's going to basically be the same process from that point on. And so with our 686, it can kind of get more elaborate just because that form is a little more confusing, and it's generally going to be filled by an employee. And so basically it's the employee action request. They want something done as far as a name change or an address change.
This is where I was talking about with the PPAF form that Jim, you sent us, is that with your form, once we sit down with you and we learn the logic of how your form is filled out, we can actually set it up exactly in a similar way to what you're seeing here, where you start out with a series of checkboxes, you answer those questions, and based on that, it only then presents the required fields for whatever role you're actually and whatever action you're taking within the form. And your form would function the same. And so that's one of the reasons we're showing you this form, is basically to look at the functionality and kind of get an idea of how yours would work.
Right. And so basically, depending on what I came in for, I say I needed a name change. If I click name change, then all of the fields populate. We do have it auto-filled with some information, but basically you're only going to see what you're supposed to see. When we spoke with previous HR directors, HR personnel, they basically said this form is a repeat offender as far as people filling in the form for the fields that they need, but then not checking the box at the top of the page. So then regardless, they would have to contact that employee, find out if they really filled what they were supposed to be filling, and just figure out in general what they were actually going for, what they were actually trying to do. And so this basically minimizes, human error, minimizes those mistakes, and makes it a lot easier to track also. And so now I'll go ahead and show you guys finally the form that you guys sent us, which is your Humboldt TPAF form. And there are multiple ways to get into our forms. It can be from a link that's on your website. It can be from the dashboard. So there's multiple ways you can get into the form itself. I'm just going to go ahead and auto-populate some information into this form here. So you're going to see a whole bunch of gibberish and a bunch of check boxes signed. But you'll notice we broke your form up into 4 tabs here, just because it is a very extensive workflow and form. It seems that you guys actually have, a couple other of our forms that we currently have built within this form. So we could also maybe sit down and talk about, which forms we already have that would be included in this process, just to make it a little simpler on your end.
Or just use yours.
Or just use yours, exactly. And so we'll go ahead and you'll notice I actually tried to submit here, but it didn't allow me to because the Social Security number wasn't entered correctly. And so we do have things like data validation that help to make sure that, again, minimizing mistakes, minimizing human error. Okay, and so basically after they submit that information, they get sent to the HR. Basically they're going to click here to review the form, and they'll be able to see everything in a read-only view here beforehand from the appointing power. But then the personnel director can enter in their approval. They approve or deny things. I'm just going to go ahead and form fill a name here. All right. So we'll go ahead and submit one more time. You also notice to this right here, this is our communication center, as we get a quick little overview of basically everything that was filled in on the stage beforehand. You'll get the name and everything like that. Any attachments that are attached throughout the process and things like that will always show up here so you can download them. And we can also control who's able to view that, who's able to download things. So if you didn't want somebody to have access to that, we can make that a possibility. So basically after that request is submitted and the personnel director approves it, it's then going to get sent out for everyone to sign. Personnel director will sign first. And you'll see the form is actually filled with all that information that we put in here. I did put a lot of information. And so we'll just go ahead and sign and apply that signature. We'll click to sign one more time. All right, and as you can see, we can download the copy again. And it basically restarts the process of everyone signing the form regardless. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into the dashboard now, just to kind of give you an overview of how you could utilize it and how it could benefit you guys.
One thing also to note about the dashboard and using this part of the product is it's all roles-based. So if you're an employee who's submitting forms to the HR department, you're only going to be able to see as an employee your specific forms that you've either started or have been sent to you. If you're a manager, you're going to be able to see everybody that is a report to you and in your organization. If you're in the HR organization, you're going to see however you've basically decided that each HR person would see. So I've discovered that HR departments is usually different from department to department. Some may have like 100 to 200 or specific organizations that they work with and so on. So it is roles-based. What you're actually going to see is menu options, what you're going to see on the screen, who you will see, and so on. And it's all based on what's been configured for that role that someone is in.
Like Jamie was saying, you do have multiple views for this dashboard. Again, if an employee is on this, you probably would only want that employee to see their own files. But if an HR specialist was on here, you probably would want them to see everyone's, and we can make that happen for you. Also, what's really cool is you have these built-in base screens, I would say, for your records, and then also for your action required. So say there was something that you still needed to sign or submit, it would let you know in this tab. Anything that you're related to at all whatsoever would be in your My Records, and then you can see all of the records if that's something that you would need. What's also really cool is you can customize the columns here and then export them.
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Sandy. So does the role-based security apply to attachments too?
Say that one more time.
Yes.
Does the security apply to the attachments?
Yes, it does.
So you're not going to be able to see. Yes, it does.
Yes, we can make it visible or non-visible for whoever. And as far as our clearance, our certifications, they apply to it also.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other questions before I continue? All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep on going. So basically, all the columns here are customizable. You can select them based off of fields from the actual form. So say you had first name, last name within the form, you can actually select that and have it set up here. You can have the date signed, the date completed, things like that. So really easy to track. And then you can export that data to, say, an Excel spreadsheet and analyze it. So those are really cool tools to use to manage compliance and manage your business processes. And so I'm just going to go ahead and show you the metrics as far as the reporting, which is kind of like the graphs that Jamie was showing in his slide deck. I'll just give it a second to load here. And basically, this is a really cool place for numbers. It basically gives you, how many people are out for signature, how many people have signed already, how many are still in process. It also gives you these nice little graphs here so you can get some workflow statistics. There's one completed, there's one pending. You can even actually click on these actual little bars, and it will actually take you to a little section where it shows you what the actual assignee is, what's the title of the form, the date, and you basically can go to that supervisor themselves or the employee themselves, let them know, hey, I need you to submit this, submit that, whatnot. So it's a really cool tool to help you manage your employees, your compliance, and all that good stuff. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jamie.
Real quick, this is Jim. I have a question. Can you show us our PPAF again? So from a department, we went kind of through that fast. From a department level, say I'm in Public Works or something, and I'm going to hire a new person. What's my experience? So I'm
you're in a department and you're hiring a new person?
Yeah.
Well, through your form, that's what we would have to sit down with your HR because I'm not sure how your workflow works.
Right. So based on your form, that's that contextual experience and how the form actually then flows. We can't tell that from just looking at the form that you sent us. So one of the things we'd have to sit down with you guys is basically go through a session of walking through the different ways that form is used and then identifying the different roles of individuals within the workflow. And then we would actually then set up the form to function in that manner. The problem for us right now, we can, like we did today, it was a very quick demo in that because we have only a rudimentary understanding of your form. We have the form, we can replicate it within our system, but then depending on which checkboxes and which things you filled out, we don't know the flow of the form. So based on that, once we sit down with you all in very short order, we're able to replicate your workflow and then send it back to you for user acceptance testing for you to make sure that it is functioning in the way that it is. It would be probably similar in the way that the RPA that we showed you all, where you'd have an individual that would start the process. We would then sit down and take your form and only present the fields necessary for that person to fill out. They wouldn't actually see the rest of the fields. then they would submit to the next party in the workflow, if that makes sense. But right now, we don't know, and that's part of the quick discovery process that we would do with you all.
So if I just wanted to do like an address change, I'm only going to see the fields that are required for the address change. I'm not going to see the whole form.
Right, exactly.
Can you walk us through like an address change?
Can we show you, could we possibly, we're not going to be able to show it in your form, but could we show it to you in the 686 and you'll get an idea of how it would function within your form? So as you see on the screen right now, if JJ chooses address change, it's only then going to present the field specific within that form to the address change and no more. And this is one of those forms where it's like yours, where they have 5 different things that this form can do. And what they have on the paper-based form is you actually have those check boxes and you check them, and then you're supposed to know which fields to fill out down below. And the problem, like JJ described, is people are constantly filling out the wrong field and leaving fields not filled out that they should fill out. And so you can also do multiple things with your form. So if JJ now clicks, you want to do an address change and you got married and you want to do a name change, it'll now then add in the field specific to those functions also. The other thing is some of the functions require an attachment, like a name change would require like a copy of a marriage license and so on. As you select the different roles, it'll actually either show that upload button or not, depending on whether or not it's a requirement based on what you've selected. So that was one of the reasons we showed this form, is that this is a state of California form, but how it works would be very similar. What I'm imagining your form, your PPAF form would function, because we were able to identify that it had parts of this form as well as other forms as well and how they work. So it's a really nice feature because it ensures then that people are only filling out the required field specifically for what they're trying to do, and it really reduces the amount of error.
So where are you getting where are you getting the Social Security number? I noticed it was pre-filled.
He was actually, he has a program that auto-populates fields for him when he's doing a demo, so that's where it was coming.
So we would type that in, the full Social Security number?
Well, only if it's a requirement. If you don't want to have the Social Security number on the form, we don't have to do that. Normally, we prefer not pulling it from somewhere, and if it is a requirement, then having the individual type it in and it's masked, so you actually can't see it on the screen, and then it's sent.
So you would type it in and then you would mask it before you send it?
Yes. Oh, well, we'd mask it on the screen so no one else could see it. We wouldn't store the Social Security number, but we would send you a form that actually had the Social Security number in it.
Okay.
We would prefer a unique ID, like an employee ID, for identifying employees.
Okay, that's all I had.
So we showed you our RPA and we showed you our 686, and they were more of not really expecting you to adopt those, but more to give you an idea of what a full-featured version of your form would look like and would work as. So as I described, the 686 your form would function, I'm imagining, in a similar way, where you would come in and be presented with a series of checkboxes. You click on those, and based on that, it dynamically then builds out the fields and the workflow based on what you've selected, and it would do this throughout. We would sit down, as I described with you all, and basically map out what is that, how does the form actually work, what are the different functions of the form, and then what is the workflow for each of those functions. And then we would quickly then map that out. We'd send you back the documentation showing that this is what we captured from you, is this accurate? And then once you said yes, we would immediately then build out the prototype form for then you all to try out and test.
What does that time frame look like? I understand initially that it might take a little while, but what does the typical time frame, based on the content of our PPAF, What's that look like?
It's pretty rapid. It depends on the complexity of the form. We're doing a form this week for Placer County, and we'll actually have the form in production by Monday. And we just started the actual workflow capture on Monday of this week. And so your form is a little more complex. As you said, the most time, the biggest time constraint is basically just capturing the workflow from you all and ensuring that what we've documented really is your workflow. The actual development time then for us is a very short amount of time. We could probably have you a prototype within a couple weeks after that, that you could already start testing.
What form are you doing for Placer County?
It is a tree mortality form. They're using monies from the state to remove trees, dead trees on property. And what we're doing for them is we've created a form that the homeowner basically fills out and signs, giving them permission to actually come onto their property and remove the tree. It's kind of a cool workflow. What we didn't say today and show you all is there's actually a mobile app that will allow you on Android and iOS devices to do everything that we've shown you today. So all of your form would be mobile ready and ready to go. With them, they're using the offline feature. So there's going to be a lot of areas in Placer County where they don't have cell connectivity or Wi-Fi connectivity. They can still fill out the forms and sign them. And when then they come back into the cell environment or a Wi-Fi environment, it'll automatically then upload all those pending workflows and continue them on through the process. And so that's what we're doing for them right now. And JJ is actually the lead on that. And he and I went up there and met with them. They've already issued a purchase order and so on. And it's a really simple form. It's basically you answer some questions, fill out some fields, and then sign at the bottom and submit. And then they have an individual inside of Placer County, actually 4 individuals that will review and sign these. They're doing, I think, about 1,000 transactions per year.
Are you working with the IT department over there, or?
We are.
In the HR.
Okay.
Yeah, not HR. They're lawyer.
I have a question. I was on the phone, but you did a great job because I was able to follow along as you maneuvered through the form. But one thing that I wasn't able to follow on was I think there was something about the signature where you had to answer 10 questions.
Oh yeah, that's actually for the justification for our RPA, for our the request for personnel action.
Okay.
What it was, it really actually wasn't related to the signature. What they have now, a lot of the state agencies, they require a written Word document justification, but in that you have to answer basically 10 questions. I have no idea why they didn't actually do this as a form. That would make a lot of sense. And so then what we're doing now is instead of them either uploading that form or just typing narrative in, I always think that when you write something in narrative, it's really incumbent then on the person who's reviewing it to find the answers to all the questions you're asking, and it's just a really inefficient business process. So what we're doing is in a new version of that form that we're working on now that'll be released shortly is it'll actually pop up a new form that will actually be the justification that they type in, and they answer all those questions within the justification, but it'll also allow them to also upload a PDF or Word document as they've been doing all along. It's just an enhancement that makes it a more efficient way of doing it.
Okay, thank you. So how do we go about setting up the security for signatures?
Okay, well, we would basically work with you. So Jim, you guys currently don't have electronic signature today?
That's correct.
Okay, so then what we would do is we would work to establish either your DocuSign or Adobe eSign account, and they would assign you a site ID. And then there's 2 different ways that you buy it. I always recommend you buy it in just quantity of signatures, because if you buy it by named individual, it's a far more expensive way of doing it. And then what you do then is you go in through your interface and you identify the different individuals that can actually use the electronic signature product. And then from there, you give us your site ID and we configure it to work with this. And so then when you're coming into the ThinkSmart HR as a service, what we've shown you, we're going to ingest and basically interface with your Active Directory. So we'll be able to authenticate who the individual is, and then that's how it'll associate with that electronic signature. So then when you're filling it out, they will have had to have authenticate through, and that's the same way that you're going to use the electronic signature product if you're going to use it in other ways as well. So that's how it would work security-wise, and that's kind of a high-level, just kind of non-technical way description. We can go into a lot more detail, and I can provide you documents and training videos actually as well, and we'll help you through setting up that site and configuring it and so on.
So are those updated? You're getting technical on me, and I'm not a technical person, but understand the Active Directory. So how often is that updated to update the security for the signatures?
Active Directory or his? Both. So Active Directory, we get, I'll do the Active Directory piece. We get, so as soon as we get a form or whatever to add or delete, we take care of that.
Okay, we talked about that yesterday.
We have a project to go through and clean up Active Directory and make it more user-friendly, which should be out pretty quick.
Okay. But we'd be responsible for setting up the signatures on the either DocuSign or Adobe, right? I mean, that would be a manual process of if you get like a new director or something that you want their signature.
Well, we could connect it to your Active Directory, or you can actually add them in manually if you're talking about, depending on the quantity of individuals that you're going to allow to use signatures. If you want to use the electronic signatures for other things other than HR as a service, you would have to add those individuals in as well. It's something through the interface with both products that you would want to monitor, because signatures do cost money. And so you would want to, in some cases, you just kind of have to be careful, because what you'll find is people will start, they're really easy to use products, and it's really easy to send a Word document to someone and require an electronic signature. It really doesn't take a technical person to do that. And that's a good thing, but it can also be a detrimental thing, because what you'll end up finding is if you're not managing the dashboard and watching your consumption, is you could potentially have kind of runaway usage where you blow through your reservoir of signatures that you've bought. Usually buy signatures in lots of like 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 signatures. And I've only seen this happen once, where I've had a department just consume all their signatures in a really rapid stance, because people thought that it was a really easy and simple thing to use, and they started using it for all kinds of stuff that the IT department wasn't aware of. And so basically that's just kind of a word of warning about how it works. But they are both really, really simple technologies. I have, without any training, I picked up both products and basically was sending Word-based non-disclosure agreements to other vendors and stuff, and having them sign, and I was amazed how simple it was to actually take and get something like that up and running. It was really, really intuitive.
Can you buy a pool of license, like say, and then reuse them over and over? Or are they going to be permanently assigned to an individual once you consume it?
Well, there's two ways you can buy. You can buy by named licenses, and then I think you get so many signatures per named license. The problem with that is you really can't allocate then the unused from one individual to another, and so I don't think it's a really efficient way of doing it. Plus, I think it would also cost a lot more, and we can sit down and I can have Harry Dugal works for us, and he works with counties and sells a lot of signatures to counties. And Jim, I can have him reach out to you and give you like different pricing scenarios and stuff like that, so you can see what it actually looks like cost-wise. The other way, and the more prevalent way that we sell, is you buy a block of signatures, and then you decide who they're allocated to. And so you're just pulling from a central pool of signatures, and you don't have to worry then. Everybody's pulling from the same pool. And then what you do is, as you run out of, over a period of time, your pool, you just true up and refresh with however many more signatures that you want. I find that, let's say for an usually if you're using the entire HR as a service suite, including the timesheet and state service, which is, the timesheet is something that they submit once a month, which is 12. We were averaging between 18 and 20 transactions per employee per year, if using all the different forms. And so that's how we normally are able to calculate out the number of signatures. For your PPAF form, it would just be based on the number of transactions that you guys do per year and the number of signatures on each of those transactions, and that would give you a good idea of what your pool would be.
So the signatures are per transaction, not per the person. So if I sign something 100 times, that's 100 different licenses?
Okay, so it's kind of hard to explain, and so if you're signing 100 different forms, it is 100 different signatures, and those each are a transaction. If there are 4 or 5 people signing in a single document, and a really good way of describing that is, you know how when you buy, if you buy a house and you sign all those different pages, and then you have other individuals that are signing at the same time, that's actually counted as a single transaction. At least with Adobe it is, and so it would be the single signature cost. I'd have to check on DocuSign to see how that's priced. It gets kind of complex, but that's kind of a rough order of how they work.
So if you have one person signing the same PPAF over and over and over, though 100 times, that's one license.
Well, it's one. Correct? If you're buying a seat for that person, yes, it's one seat license, and they've signed 100 different forms. If you're buying a pool of signatures, that would be 100 signatures. So do you understand that you can buy it 2 different ways?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to think, if we only have one form, we're never going to have another form, say, it's a PPAF, and we have the same people signing that form over and over.
Then I would recommend buying, I would buy seat licenses. That would probably be the best way to do it then in that case.
Okay.
So when you buy one of those licenses, can you reassign it to somebody else if that person is no longer with the organization?
Yes,
or do you have to buy a new license?
No, you can, if a person leaves, you can actually reallocate a license to another person.
I don't have any other questions. Guys, is there anything else you want to show us or tell us?
I do have another question. So we talked about new forms. What's the process for changes to forms?
It's included in the subscription price, and you basically just contact us and give us your changes and tell us when you need to have them in place, and then we make the changes for you and put them in production on the day that you've asked for them to be in production. But it's included within the subscription. We maintain the forms for you.
Okay. And is there a limit to the changes that can be made to the form?
No, I mean, so far we've never found it necessary to do that, primarily because we've discovered that organizations don't change forms a lot. Maybe they do it, maybe a couple times a year. I mean, I suppose that if it was like a weekly thing, we might have to revisit that as a policy.
Yeah.
But I don't, and it also depends on the extensiveness of the changes. But we've always taken the approach that it's included within the fee.
Okay. I heard on the telephone that you can download the information from the form into Excel. Is that accurate?
It is. You can download a lot of different information. You can actually download like the dashboard that you see. So like as an example, if you have a list on your dashboard of workflow processes that have not been completed, you can actually export that out to Excel and then email it to someone and say, hey, these individuals, here's their email addresses and telephone numbers, have not completed this, and we need to, so you can do that. The actual forms themselves, you can, there's different what are called APIs, which are just ways of connecting the technology to other technology. And so you can have, if you've completed a form and once the form is done, we can actually have the system send a database server on your side that transaction of data. You can also, on a daily basis, pull over all of your transaction data. There's a myriad of different ways that we can hand off data. Forms, the same thing, completed PDF forms that are signed, you can actually take and store on a SharePoint site, a file directory, or you can leave them in the repository, and they will stay in the repository within HR as a service for as long as you've told us your retention period is. And so we just basically match your required retention requirements.
So what types of systems are you able to interface with? What about one solution?
We've not found a solution yet that we've not been able to interface to. I'm not familiar with us connecting to that, but we've done things like, let's see, Workday, PeopleSoft, a myriad of different ERP systems and things like that. So I've not, like I said, I've not run into anything yet that we haven't been able to interface with. Jim, I don't, the questions have been great. We don't have anything else to show you all. I've shown you now on my screen mine and JJ's contact information, and we'd be happy to, I'm still recording, and I'll stop the recording here in a minute, and then I'm keeping my fingers crossed that WebEx actually is captured and stored the recording of this, and as well as the question and answer, and then we'll put that out on a server, and then I'll supply you guys the link that you can hand around to different individuals that weren't actually able to see what we were presenting.
Can I ask just one more question? I'm sorry, sure. Can I ask one more question? So if there's a technical issue with the form, say an employee is completing a form or a manager, would they call you or would they call us?
They would call you first, and then you would reach out to our help desk, and we would fix it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, if you want to include the PowerPoint, we can forward it to everyone.
Okay, I'll do that as well. I'll send a PDF version of the PowerPoint over to you guys.
Okay.
Well, thank you all very, very much for taking the time and letting us demo. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to do more demos if you guys like. And Jim, if you want and you guys are interested, we could work through and, put together a budgeting quote of what it would look like, and so on, cost-wise. And we are starting to do, kind of funny, since you and I first started talking, we actually are now starting to do county work. We've not yet rolled out HR as a service and products from it in the counties, but we're starting to do individual forms for them. And so we are looking to really expand into the counties within California, and we're willing to offer early adopter pricing for the first year that would be significant enough to make it very appealing to do. It's an inexpensive service to use anyways, but it's even more inexpensive the first year, and to be honest with you, we're looking to build out our reference, within the counties within California.
And real quick, did you say you're out of Sacramento?
We are. We're based in Sacramento.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. I don't have anything else.
I don't either. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very, very much.